You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
From kitchen chaos to well-oiled machines, get ready for newfangled technology and old-school know-how. Stories and a good bit of fun. I'm Simon, and this is Culinary Mechanic. Joining me today is Meathead, author of the Meathead Method. Meathead, welcome to Culinary Mechanic.
Well, thank you. It's what a pleasure to be here.
All right. It's not every day I get somebody who's been on the New York Times bestseller list. You know, let's press on the gas right away and just say, give me the origin story, man. How did Meathead come about?
Oh, geez. My dad came back from World War II and opened a butcher shop. First he went to NYU and he got a degree in meat technology. Then he opened a butcher shop. So, you know, cooking's always been in and around the family. He was not a chef or a cook. Although we did, actually, now that I think of it, he did open a restaurant once. Didn't last long. Neither did the butcher shop. But I loved hanging around the grill with him, you know, the smell. And, you know, he might have let me have a little beer along the way. And his specialty was flank steak. And oh, God, it was great. And, I got to college. And because I could cook a little, my roommates, I had, 3 roommates in a apartment just off of the campus. I went to the University of Florida. They asked me to do a lot of the cooking. And fortunately, our apartment had a grill right out the back, one of those cast aluminum things. It was a U-shaped apartment complex, and they had grills scattered around on the grounds there. And we were right in front of one. So I grilled a lot, and I cooked a lot, and I got a job at ABC Liquors in Florida and got deep into wine. I eventually moved to Chicago, where I was the wine buyer and consultant for a chain of stores, Foremost Liquors, 120 stores. The official wine buyer's name was Madeline Sherry. That was me. I was Madeline. And
funny.
I was into it in a big way. And when Ruth Ellen Church, the very first wine critic in the country, who wrote a regular weekly wine column for the Chicago Tribune, when she retired, they held a search and I got the job. So I was the wine critic for the Chicago Tribune for a while. Then I launched a wine magazine called International Wine Review, which I sold in the year 2000. And that is the year I switched to solid food. And I got to cooking a lot. And in 2005, I launched the website, AmazingRibs.com. And it was Amazing Ribs because I didn't expect it to become a big deal. My neighbor was a butcher, and we were barking at each other about who made the best ribs. So we had a little cook-off with our wives as judges, and they wisely called it a draw. But I beat him. I know I did. And
cool.
And before that, I started looking for ribs recipes on the internet. We're talking 2004, 2005. There wasn't much of an internet in those days, and no. It was not organized. There was no Google. Yahoo's search engine was the biggest and the best. And it was just like going to the library and all the books were on the floor. There was no real organization to it. But somehow or other, when Google launched, they took a shine to my site, and I started adding to it beyond ribs, brisket and steaks and burgers, and it took off. It's now by far the most popular barbecue and grilling website in the world, with over 2,000 pages, free pages, that are cooking and science and myth busting and product reviews. And then we have a paid portion of the website called the Pitmaster Club, which is phenomenal. We've got 120 broadcast quality instructional videos from Tuffy Stone, and all the top pitmasters are in there. And it's been a ride. I've got Clint Cantwell, my right hand man. He's very well known and respected. Got a guy who does nothing but review grills and smokers full time. We don't sell any, by the way.
I'm
We
gonna
don't.
put my application in.
Yeah,
I want
I
to do
hear
that.
that a lot. I hear that. And we got another guy, he's electrical engineer. He's not full time, but he does all of our thermometer reviews. We have a couple of hundred reviews of thermometers. So if you're shopping to replace that old rust bucket, come on down. It's free. A database of several hundred grills and smokers. And Max Good is his name. He does a great job. I mean, really dives deep. I mean, he tries to break these things, and it's not just. And because we don't sell them, we don't pull punches. I mean,
Right.
he'll call something a clunker if it is, and I guess that's the whole story. I forgot something very important. Just about 3 or 4 years ago, I was inducted into the Barbecue Hall of Fame, something about which I am very proud. There
That's
are
amazing.
only 40 living members of the Barbecue Hall of Fame, and if you're into barbecue and grilling, you probably know all of them. And it's quite an honor.
Well, right on. Um, yeah, I mean, I got a chance to dig into this book, and I mean, I'm a chef with 30 plus years experience, and I loved it, man. There was a couple moments honestly where I was like, "Oh, I don't think I knew that." I mean, there's a good bit of the science piece that really got my juices going. Um, you mentioned the grills and you mentioned the smokers. Um, what are a couple of the let's start with the easy stuff, right? What are a couple of those essential tools for you that really
Well,
sort of make
there's
tools and
there's
skills,
two
right?
absolutely essential skills. Number two is what most chefs will call number one, but I think it's number two, and that is a great sharp knife.
Yes.
Um, there's no substitute for having a great sharp knife. And if you can afford multiple, have a paring knife, have a chef's knife. But a chef's knife is the single most important. You can do almost everything with it. I'm real fond of my inexpensive Rapala filleting knife, bought at Bass Pro for like 20 bucks. But
There
it's
you go.
wicked sharp and it's really flexible, so I can work around bones. So I think knives are really crucial. My number one most important thing, thermometers. Cooking is
Okay.
all about heat. Cooking is all about temperature. A perfect steak, we know, is what a steak is most tender and most juicy at 130 to 135 Fahrenheit. And we know that because there's gizmo called the Warner Bratzler machine, which is like an artificial tooth, and it presses down on the meat and measures how much resistance is there. And there's other devices that measure the moisture. So at around 130, 135, you'll get your most tender and most juicy steak. How do you know you're there? You don't have to cut into it because you really can't tell by cutting into it. The light affects it. I mean, incandescent light's different than fluorescent light, different than LEDs, um, sunlight. And the meat changes color with exposure to oxygen. So cutting into it is highly deceptive. What you need is a good instant read thermometer. Here, I happen to have here my favorite. This is the Fireboard. And you can
Nice.
see it's got a probe. And
Yep.
that probe goes into the center of the meat and tells you, and excuse me, it's highly accurate. It's accurate within a degree or two at the most, and 1 second reading, 2 seconds at the most, really
There you go.
fast. Now that one's 150 bucks,
Right.
but I don't have it with me, but there is one that's really good that takes 5 seconds and is accurate with 1 or 2 degrees and costs 15 bucks.
Right.
It's by ThermaPro. They're both
Oh wow.
available on Amazon. They're really so you need an instant read thermometer, not just to get optimum doneness on a steak And God knows how many times that in the old days, you'd cook a steak and serve it to the table, and your boss is over for dinner, and the steak is overcooked. That's really embarrassing. But much more important is poultry, chicken, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, a
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
years ago, Consumer Reports did a test. They bought 300 chicken breasts, and 90% of them had pathogenic bacteria.
Yeah.
Now, pathogenic bacteria are all killed at 160, 165 degrees.
Right.
So you got to cook chicken to 160, 165 degrees. How do you know? Digital thermometer.
Thermometer. I
So
love it.
it is the single most important tool. And I know listening out there, there's a bunch of old knuckle draggers. "Nah, the thermometer." You do. And you need it for safety and for quality. And if you're not using one, you're not cooking.
Well, I tell you, I think I it's one of those things. It's like, oh, I can do it without it, sure, but why bother? That's the way I've always looked at it.
Now, if
Um,
you're the chef at Morton's Steakhouse
yeah,
and you're cooking the same steak, same thickness, from the same herd every night, then you can possibly tell by poking it.
yeah,
But I got to tell you, all the cookbooks that say poke your hand. Well, my hand is a lot different than somebody who exercises regularly. And filet mignon is a lot different than sirloin. You
yes,
cannot
sir.
tell by poking it. You can't tell by cutting into it. You need a thermometer. Get over it if you're not if you're one of those knuckle draggers.
I love that term. Well, I tell you, the one thing I can tell you, having worked in some corporate, I worked for Morton's for a very short time. I worked for a number of other corporate restaurants, and they're using thermometers. So you're on the right track. I'm
Good,
here to
good.
tell you. Um, you know, one of the things that is really fun about your book is that you're throwing pages that are like debunking a myth here and debunking a myth there. uh you know let's get down to what do you think are some of the big ones that people
Well, first of all,
espouse, and then all of a sudden let's bust them. Let's pause for a second. If you're serious about building a kitchen that leads from the top, runs on systems, and actually feels good to work in, make sure you're following Culinary Mechanic. This show is all about helping you lead better, scale smarter, and stop white knuckling your business. And if you're ready to dig in deeper, you'll find a link in the show notes to connect with me directly.
first of all, there are a lot of myths out there, and that's because I learned from my dad, and he learned from his dad, and you learned from your dad, and he learned from his dad. And so, what we thought we knew about cooking in 1900 keeps getting passed on down. But this is 2025. And
Mhm.
we have instant read thermometers, 2 seconds on the button, precisely accurate. There's the Warner Bratzler machine to measure all kinds of stuff about tenderness. Almost every university now has a food science department. The food science and food technology has come many miles in the past decade. And so a lot of what we thought to be true, we now learn is not true. I mean, here's a very simple one. Let's see if I can show you. Let's see here. See those bookshelves, those
Yes,
IKEA
sir.
bookshelves? Those are all books about barbecue. Every book ever been published on barbecue, I got it. And
Nice.
I'm going back years. Um, they all say soak your wood chips. Some of them say soak them for an hour or two. Some of them say soak them overnight. Well, there's a reason they build boats out of wood because it doesn't absorb water. And we tested it. I mean, it was a really simple piece of research. We took a bunch of wood chips and wood chunks both, weighed them, then soaked them overnight, then patted the surface dry because there was a lot of water hanging on the surface. We wanted to see if it absorbed water. And then weighed them again. And there was about a 2% weight gain, and that was just on the surface of the wood. Cut open the wood chunks. There's no water in there.
No.
It doesn't penetrate wood. I mean, if you want water to penetrate wood, you got to sink it for 50 years, like some of the old trees that fall into the lakes and stuff. But
Yep.
so, what happens when you take wet wood and throw it on a charcoal fire? Knocks the temperature way down. Throw it
Which
on a
is
gas fire.
only reason I'd want to use it, right? Like, oh, we're a little too hot, but that so rarely happens.
Well, you throw it on any fire, gas or charcoal,
Yeah.
and you're going to see a lot of white stuff coming up, and everybody says, "Look at all that great smoke." It's not smoke. It's steam.
Steam.
Water converts to steam, phase change at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Wood doesn't start to smoke till 500 degrees. So what happens is the wood goes up to 212 and it can't go any higher until it gets rid of that water. So it happens pretty quick. It burns off pretty quick, but all that white stuff, if you hold a mirror in it, you'll see it fog up. It's steam. And then it can go up to 500 and you can get some smoke. So don't soak your wood. It's a waste of time. In fact, it actually inhibits smoke formation because it takes so long.
Right.
Classic myth, and I guarantee 99% of these barbecue books tell you to soak your wood.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was definitely taught to me. I even had some chefs back in the day where we were working over wood fire and grilling, not a whole lot of smoking, but a whole lot of grilling in big steakhouses. And for us, it was the reason that we would soak the wood was to be able to have some wood that was smoked to be able to bring the temperature of the fire down, because we would kick up around 750, 800 degrees at times.
But what were you using for fuel? Were you burning wood? I mean, were you cooking with logs or were you cooking with charcoal?
We started with mesquite charcoal, and then we would move on to hickory. Well, it was a rotation of hickory, sassafras, and
you're talking about Morton's?
No, sir. This is the Ranchers Club of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
And I'm talking a good long time ago.
All right. Now let's talk about Morton's, Ruth's Chris, all the others. What do they cook with?
Yes.
Of course.
They're cooking.
Yes. All right. Let's take on this gas versus charcoal bullshit argument. I mean, you pay a lot of money for a really good tasting steak at Morton's, Ruth's Chris, all these great steakhouses. And they're all cooking with gas.
Yeah.
But you're sitting at home saying, "No way I cook a steak with gas. I'm a charcoal man." Here's why you prefer charcoal. Not because it has more flavor. Charcoal is carbon. It's char. Now, some lump charcoal is not thoroughly carbonized, and so there may still be some lignin and other compounds in there, and they'll smoke and they'll crackle and pop, and you don't know what kind of smoke that is because you don't know what kind of wood it is. But briquettes are almost pure char, carbon.
Yep.
There's some binders in there that are perfectly safe. People seem to freak out about additives to their charcoal, mostly cornstarch. But think about this. You light charcoal, especially briquettes, and it puts out a lot of smoke right away.
Yep.
And that is combustion gases and things that are created in the combustion process, in the start of combustion. But when they're covered with ash, when they're fully ignited, when they're in the game, you don't see any smoke. They don't make any smoke. They don't make much flavor either. If you want flavor, you get it for wood. Yep. Charcoal is for heat. Wood is for flavor. Repeat after me. Charcoal is for heat. Wood is for flavor.
Wood is for flavor.
Yeah.
We got
everybody
it, man.
listening. Charcoal is for heat. Wood is for flavor. You're not going to get a lot of flavor from charcoal. You might get some from lump, but you don't know what kind of wood you're burning, what kind of smoke you're getting. And you've got pieces the size of softball and the size of your thumb. It burns erratically. There's a ton of dust in the bag. I'm absolutely, and I'm not paid by Kingsford or anybody to say this, I'm all about control. I'm a control freak. And if I want to control temperature, I'm using briquettes, because a charcoal chimney, the ones made by Weber, which is
Yep.
what I use, hold exactly 80 briquettes.
There
And
you
so
go.
I can predict how hot it's going to be. Half
Yep.
a chimney is 40 briquettes, half speed. Because there's no thermostats on your grill or on your, your charcoal grill. Yeah, there's a couple of gadgets that you can attach that will restrict airflow and therefore control the temperature. But you don't want to restrict airflow when you're burning charcoal or wood. You want airflow
Right.
because here's another myth. You don't want over his shoulder that lovely white smoke. It's good, it's not bad, but the best smoke is what's over. Oh, there it came back. The best smoke is what we call blue smoke. And it's almost invisible because the particles are so small. White
Right.
smoke, the particles are larger, they refract more light. And
Right.
you absolutely do not want yellow, brown, or black smoke because those are large particles. So white smoke good, blue smoke best. Blue smoke is almost invisible, and you get blue smoke when the wood burns, not smolders. You get white smoke when it's smoldering, and it's smoldering because you've restricted the airflow. You want to let as much air as you can on it and let it burn with a yellow flame. You'll go through more wood, but you'll get better flavor. Yellow flame indicates impurities that are being burned off in the cooking process. So all this business about, I want lots of smoke, I want white smoke, I want all part of the myth.
For me, it's almost it's myth, but it's also lore, right? It's like it's the things that we do. I think there's some there's what'd you say, knuckle draggers earlier? It's the chest pounding, like I'm the man, I'm the barbecue guy. I love that stuff. But you picked on one of my favorite things and I read through it and I was like, oh, beer can chicken.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew
I
you were going to.
love it.
All right.
I love it.
But you get it now, don't you? Let me go.
Totally.
Let me explain why beer
Totally.
can chicken doesn't work the way you think it does, folks. Uh, First of all, let's start here because everybody who loves beer can chicken is getting ready to turn off the radio. Beer can chicken's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah.
It tastes great. And you know why? It's bloody roast chicken, for Christ's sake. And roast chicken is always wonderful, whether you do it in the grill, in the smoker, in your kitchen, whatever. Roast chicken is wonderful. It's a great miracle of culinary art. But there are better ways to cook it than sitting on a beer can. Now,
You know,
what happens? Okay, you take the chicken out of the fridge at 38 degrees. That's hopefully what your refrigerated temperature is, and the beer can too. And you stick the beer can up the butt of the chicken. You have
love
now
the
made
chicken.
a chicken koozie. You have insulated that beer can with a cold chicken,
Yep.
just like a beer can koozie. But you've also made one large thermal mass, like a bowling ball. And it takes time for the energy in the form of heat to penetrate the outer layers of the chicken, go all the way through the breast to the center to make it safe. And you need to cook it to a minimum of 160. What USDA says 165, 160 will work for you, and it'll be more juicy. Cook it all the way through. It takes time. If you've stuck a beer can up there, it takes longer because it's now cold. And while the outside is warming up, the inside, that beer can is staying at the same temperature because it's wrapped by a cold chicken. So it takes a while. Now, beer is what averages around 90% water. What temperature does water
Yep.
boil at? 212.
12.
So you got that beer can, it's stuffed in there and it's all the way up to the shoulders. But it's done at 160 to 165. It's not boiling. It's never going to
What's
boil.
happening really?
If you get it to 212, you're going to have one destroyed chicken.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Even if, under some miraculous conditions, it boiled, it steamed, it would only contact the area above the beer can, that's the shoulders. There's no superhighway that runs from the shoulder all the way down to the thigh and the leg or the breast. There's no way for the beer to evaporate and then magically move through the chicken. It just can't do it. And to make matters worse, chicken and most meat, chicken, beef, pork, they run around 75% water. Yeah, there's
Yep.
that much water. 75%. There's no room for more liquid inside those muscles. The beer can't get in. And finally, who the hell wants a chicken that tastes like beer? You know?
It
Have,
depends on what beer we're talking about, but
oh, I
yes.
love beer, but I love chicken too. And I don't think they are a combination I want mixed together. I like them one side by side. Final argument. Can you name for me one Michelin star restaurant serving beer can chicken? No, the
Yeah,
chefs know better
no,
than that.
no,
So
no, no,
it
no.
is marvelously good because it's roast chicken, but there are better ways to cook a chicken. The best
For
way,
sure.
especially if you're on a grill, is to break it down into 8 parts: two
Yep.
breasts, two thighs, two legs, two wings. That's your eight
Yeah.
parts. Break them down. Now, the cavity, the inside of the chicken, is exposed to air. You can brown it on both sides. Brown is beautiful. Brown is the Maillard reaction. It's a chemical reaction that happens to proteins and amino acids. And the more brown you can get in anything you're cooking, the better it's going to taste. So if you've got a beer can up, but it's blocking the interior from turning brown. But if you cut it up, you can now, and the breast on the inside is the rib bones. You
Yep.
cut it up and you lay those rib bones down over the heat, and it browns and gets more flavor. And it has less evaporation, less water loss. It cooks faster. And if you got a good thermometer, you can temp your pieces each individually because those wings are going to cook a lot faster than the breasts.
Yes, sir.
So you cook the wings and push them off to the side. Now you got the thighs and the drum. Now I said 160 is your go-to temp, but actually thighs and drums are brown meat, dark meat. And they were probably best at 170. But the
Yep.
breasts, you don't want to push past 160 if you can avoid it.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you can now individually temp all the parts, get them off at optimum tenderness and juiciness. So I love beer
absolutely.
can chicken, but there are better ways.
For sure. I think for me, you mentioned breaking it down into 8 pieces. I start to talk about surface area because I'm the crispy critter guy, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I like the skin to be crispy. I like the little corners of the flesh to be a little crispy here and there, and then have the juicy on the inside. So I like surface area. I have so many friends who are just like, oh well, it's they talk about and they talk about the whole bird and the beer can chicken, and I'm like, nah, for me, break down the chicken, throw it on the grill. You're really gonna be happier.
Well,
Um,
let me share another concept from actually I introduced it in my first book, Meathead: The Science of Great Barbecue and Grilling, which came out 9 years ago and sold 250,000 copies. I think most cookbooks are really happy if they get to 20. 250,000 is pretty impressive.
Pretty awesome.
And it's called reverse sear. And reverse sear is a concept that's starting to catch on. It's been around for a long time. I didn't invent it, but I popularized it. Most people had never heard of it, and I've been preaching it every chance I can get, like now. Reverse sear. You're going to start off with your grill, charcoal or gas, in two zones. I want a hot side and a not hot side. I want the coals pushed all the way over to one side. I want one burner on high and the other side nothing. And what you now have is two temperature zones. Temperature control. It's all about temperature control. If you start your chicken, how many times have you been to a 4th of July Memorial Day party and you get a chicken with a nice brown, crunchy skin and it's raw in the center? And we've all seen it and you don't want it. You start your chicken in the not hot zone, away from the charcoal, away from the flame. And it will warm gently and slowly because there's convection airflow. If you've got the lid closed, warm air will come over from the hot side and circulate around the meat. But it's not nearly as hot as if you put it over the coals because you've got three types of energy under the hood. You've got that convection airflow in the not hot side, And you've got hot metal underneath, which is conduction energy, and that's what causes grill marks. And then over the coals, over glowing coals or the flame of the gas grill, you have infrared energy. And infrared energy is really potent, really hot. And you use that judiciously, and you use it primarily on the outside of the food, on the skin of the chicken, on the crust of the steak. But most of your cooking is going to be done on the indirect convection airflow side. Now, you can throw wood on top of the infrared flames, and that smoke will travel over to the indirect side, and it will flavor the meat nicely. But what happens over there is the meat cooks slowly and gently, so it's the same temperature edge to edge. If you cook like a skinny steak right over a hot coals, you're going to get a dark brown exterior. You're going to get a light brown layer just below it. You're going to get a tan layer below that. You're going to get a pink layer below that. And finally, in the center, maybe half the meat is perfectly medium rare.
Right.
If you do the reverse sear on a steak, or I'm talking about chicken, but it works on a steak too. Works on a thick steak, inch and a half or so. Doesn't work too good on a really skinny steak. Little skinny steak, yeah, hot and fast right over the coals. That's okay. But for a thicker steak, you start it over to here on the indirect side. I like to call it in the shade because it's like when you go outside on a hot day. There's a lot of we know about ultraviolet. That's what changes your skin color. But there's a lot of infrared in the air, more than there is ultraviolet. But if you step in the shade of a tree, you're blocking the infrared. So we want to start on that indirect side, gently warm that chicken till it gets up to remember our target in general is 160. Take it up to about 150. And then lift the lid and leave it up. Move that chicken over to the infrared side, skin down. And in a very short order, that skin will crisp, turn golden. It'll be like potato chips. Flip it over, get the other side, brown it, and it'll by now that extra heat will warm it up to 160, 165. It's safe. It's cooked perfectly inside and out. You got great crispy skin. You got brown on the inside, the underside, I should say, and you've got really good chicken. And the same thing with the steak. You're going to take that steak, take it up to about we said 130, 135 is our target. So take it up to 120, 125. It'll be beautiful, even color. Lift the lid. You want to lift the lid. Well, here's another treat. You're going to move that steak over the hot side, and it starts to create that dark crust. You're going to flip it every minute. All those books over here on my bookshelf say, put it down and don't touch it. It's wrong. This is simple physics. That heat, infrared energy, is potent, and it's pounding the underside. And if you leave it down for a long time, it starts to work its way to the center, and you get that rainbow of color. You don't want that. You want it even color inside. So pound the surface and then flip. When you flip, the side that was getting pounded by infrared is now up. And where's all that infrared go? Into the atmosphere. Instead of going down into the meat, it goes to the path of least resistance through the air rather than the more difficult path of through the water, through the meat. So now you flip again. And you become like the human rotisserie. Every minute or two, you flip. And in 3 or 4 or 5 minutes at the most, you've got yourself a beautiful dark crust. And the interior is edge to edge, bumper to bumper, perfect medium rare. So reverse sear works for almost anything. It's a concept you need to get your head wrapped around. I know a lot of you guys, you start your charcoal grill, you spread the coals all over the bottom. Don't do it. Keep them off to one side.
Yeah. I'm telling you, 2 sips and flip is the way to go. 2 sips of my beer, flip it. I
like that. 2 sips and flip. I love it.
2 sips and flip. It works.
I love it. 2 sips and flip. I'm going to use that.
And can't please, by all means. Um, yeah, you can't do it in the restaurants that way, but one thing I have learned is just, I remember the old days when everything was all about the grill marks, right? And I feel like somewhere around that turn of the century, early 2000s, people started to really understand that you wanted crust. And so it stopped being about like leaving it for that perfect grill mark and the diamond. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
the back in the early 90s, I worked in a steakhouse, and they would even get fussy about having diamonds on the back of that New York sirloin's fat cap, right?
Well, if
And
you turn
nowadays
on
it's like you would never do it. You would just never
if
do it.
if you turn on the Food Network or go to YouTube and you look up how to cook a steak, they're all going to tell you put the steak down until it has a set of grill marks. Then turn it 45 degrees till it has a cross section. But in between those grill marks, the meat is gray or tan. It's those grill marks are the Maillard reaction. Those grill marks are caused by conduction energy from the grill grates, and that's intense energy. But you want as much Maillard reaction, that's flavor, as you can get,
Absolutely.
and so you're getting only prison stripes on
Right.
the meat, and in
Yeah.
between those stripes, and there's actually a steak cooking competition out there, and they give you extra points if you get beautiful grill marks. I mean, it's crazy.
So funny. Like I say, it's the lore, like you talk about the myths, but it's the grand lore of it all.
And the way you
Um,
get that even color, I could show you some pictures. The way you get we're just audio, we're not video. Is that correct?
um, I can do video.
Well, I mean, when you pass it out,
When I
when you
push this out, I'll push it out on YouTube as well. Yes.
oh really? Well,
Yeah.
I'll get some pictures up for you, but I'll show you a perfect steak and an imperfect steak. But that now to get that all over Maillard reaction, you've got to flip, flip, flip because by leaving it all in one place, it's just scoring
Absolutely.
that little surface. But
Yep.
you can get it all over, and it's the way to go.
I 100% agree. Um, we can't talk about barbecue and not talk about brisket. Um, so tell me your favorite way or the way that's in that book that really kind of gets you going. Because I think I think for me, the measure of somebody who really understands barbecue is brisket.
Yeah, brisket is the Mount Everest. It's the getting there and getting it right is really hard. Let's start with the fact that these are the pectoral muscles, the chest muscles. There's two muscles on a brisket, the flat and the point, and they lay at slightly different angles. And there's a thick layer of fat in between them and a thick layer of fat on top, but not on the bottom. So you've got two muscles, and they are very tough because the steer does not have a collarbone. All its weight, the head, the neck, the shoulders, the front legs, and half the midsection are on top of those muscles. So they're very hardworking and they're very tough. And they're also very flavorful. And there is an art to getting them tender and juicy. Now, we know an ideal steak is 130 to 135, but if you cook a brisket to that temperature, you won't be able to chew through it. We
Exactly.
know that at 155, it turns gray and it's medium and it's well done. You
Right.
can at that point, most meats are dry,
Right.
but a brisket needs to be cooked to a minimum of 190, and many of the top competition cooks take it up to 203. Now, what's smart is what's happening now with brisket in competition. There's these two muscles, they lay on top of each other, just like my hands are here. And there's this
They're
thick
crossed
layer
for
of
the record.
fat right in between. Separate the two muscles.
sir.
Um, if you leave them together, the point muscle is on just about half of the flat muscle. So you end up with something that's almost teardrop shaped. It's much thicker at one end than the other. But if you remove the point muscle, the flat muscle is quite uniform and it's beautiful. This is where you get your beautiful corned beef slices, your beautiful pastrami slices. And in competition, you get your best brisket slices. They're all perfect slices. But the point muscle, which is kind of floppy and funny shape, is where you get your burnt ends, or that the point muscle has more marbling, and so therefore it's more tender and more juicy. And a lot of the cooks will you make burnt ends out of it, and I'll explain that in a minute. But a lot of the cooks now are taking those two muscles and separating them. And this is a really smart idea. It goes back to what we were talking about chicken. Break it down. When you cook a whole animal, say a whole hog, well, your tenderloin is going to be badly overcooked, and that's the most tender and juicy piece of the hog. The loin, and there's a difference between tenderloin and loin on the hog. The loin is going to be badly overcooked, and that's a pretty tender piece, but it needs to be cooked to a higher temperature, or a different temperature, I should say, than the tenderloin. And then you got your shoulders. Now, if you're going to do the whole hog, usually you're going to cook until your shoulders and your hams are optimum temp, which is way up in the 200. So now you're basically struggling to get all of these different muscles, which are optimum temperatures different, done at the same time. Same thing with a turkey. You do a Norman Rockwell turkey.
I knew it was coming.
Thanksgiving, you've got this big old Norman Rockwell turkey. And God help you if you stuff it. Do not stuff your turkey, because that makes it a big thermal mass. It takes much longer for the energy to travel from the outside to the center, and to make the center safe, get that bird emptied out. And, if you want to do it properly, you break it down like I suggested you break down a chicken into 6 or 8 pieces. Or you can do something that works pretty well called spatchcocking. And that is, you cut the backbone out and open the bird up, butterfly it. And now you can brown both sides. You can brown the cavity, you can brown the skin. It cooks faster, it's more tender, it's more juicy. It's just not the traditional Norman Rockwell bird. But if you do it right, I've been able to fake it and cook it spatchcock, or butterfly it is a more polite word, and kind of squish it around and make it look like a whole bird. But it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, for years I was saying to people, I'm like, break your bird apart, cook your thighs and legs separate. I mean, I'm a fan of cooking the dark meat is like coq au vin kind of style, red wine and vegetables and braise it. And
Amen.
then I like to right, and then I like to roast the breasts. And when I'm happiest is when I'm throwing bacon under the skin of those breasts.
Everybody out there who likes fried chicken, raise your hand. Yeah, but you don't do it.
I
You don't do it at home, do you? Because it spatters all over the stovetop, all over the counters. It gets on the floor, sets off the smoke alarm, and you end up sleeping on the couch. Go out to your gas grill, turn one burner on the on either the far left or far right. Put a Dutch oven on top, about 2 inches of oil. Get it up to 350 to 375. That's your magic number for frying. In goes the chicken. Bread it however you like. You can just go straight flour. That's all you need. Or you can go flour into egg and then back into the flour, or flour into egg and then into ground up breakfast cereal, or Cheetos or whatever. There's the bazillion ways to coat them. But this is just straight flour. And out they come. Crispy, crunchy. That you sit them over here on the side that's off. We're in 2 zones again. They drip dry. We don't care. They stay warm. Take them all out. Put them over here. Get the next batch going. Fried chicken is now barbecue.
I love it. You just put on a masterclass on how to be taking care of your meat outdoors. how to grill.
Well, it's
Um,
just a sampling of what you'll find in either of my books. I mean, I recommend you buy them both. The first one has your classics, steaks and burgers and ribs and brisket, and how to do them in your backyard for optimum tenderness and flavor. The
right,
second book, I introduce Asian flavors, Italian flavors, Spanish flavors. I'm trying to teach
right.
you to fish. I'm trying to teach you how things happen, and when things happen, how to think your way through them, how to get yourself out of trouble.
I love it. I will make sure in the show notes that we know how to find AmazingRibs.com, the Meathead Method, the first Meathead book as well. Meathead, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming to play with me. I like to call this my little sandbox of the world. I appreciate you. All you out there, you can find us on YouTube. You can also find us wherever you consume your podcasts. Till next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. You've been listening to Culinary Mechanic. This show exists to help you lead with more clarity, build systems that actually work, and create a kitchen culture worth showing up for. If this episode helped you move even one step in that direction, do me a favor, leave a quick review. It helps more chefs and operators stop the chaos and start leading with intention.